thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor of Sheffield Council, for making time for us to present this, and I hope we will have a little bit of time for at least one person to come back. Congratulations to Councillor Drabble. Thank you to the officers for their help. Before I start my main speech, I'd just like to draw people's attention to what it actually says in clause 14 of our amendment. We're absolutely happy to forego any rise in councillor pay. Personally, I'm quite happy for that to go to what they were proposed for transport subsidies, but I do think it's a matter of common decency to talk about terms and conditions with your colleagues before bringing it to a public arena. That's the only point I was trying to make. I want to look at the big picture here, which is what has been referred to by a lot of people is the sort of dire situation that local government is in terms of funds. And the Local Government Association has said what a lot of people have said here about the outlook of councils that there's going to be a 30% shortfall nationally between the money coming in and even our most basic services by 2020. What the Local Government Association have recommended is obviously more money, but also reform of local government, reform of social care funding, which is the key part of the problem that we face. But thirdly, they said, and I quote, they want a free conversation between councils and residents about how much tax they're prepared to pay and what services they want. That conversation needs to take place about the very future of local government. Coming back to what's been said during the course of this afternoon, we've heard a lot from the administration about the horrors of the cuts being imposed on us, and I agree absolutely. What we haven't heard is any really strong indications, let alone promises, of what the future Labour government would do. I looked at what was said in the last Labour Party conference. Hilary Benn did say there would be a change to the national funding formula. Good. But what Ed Miliband said, he wanted an innovation task force to advise how we can make a difference with less money around. That doesn't sound like a commitment to close the funding gaps that we face. Back in 2007, Sir Michael Lyons, who was formerly the Chief Executive of Birmingham, was asked by the Labour government to come forward with a set of reforms that would sort this sort of problem out. He did so, they were ignored, he moved on to something else. The core of this is about tax. It's about whether we are prepared to raise tax. Since proposing this, we've had a lot of comeback on forums, yes, but also in emails and conversations on the doorstep. There's an email that quite a few people here will have had, I think, from somebody who was pointing out that before we raise council tax, we should collect unpaid tax, and he referred to the 30 million that's accrued over the last 12 years. I sent a reply to him and explained how this was bad debt, it would cost more to collect than we don't get. And he replied to me with an answer which I thought was very sad. He said, so it depends on mugs like me paying my council tax. I just think it's really sad that people have begun to think about paying council tax as being a mug's game, rather than something that they feel proud of to be part of supporting services in the city. By contrast, one of the letters in the Telegraph about this issue was somebody saying maybe freeze isn't such a good thing. And some of the people who will admittedly have to pay more tax and will struggle to do so actually benefit from their services. So if you're somebody where your local library is closed, how much will it cost you to take you and your kids to a library by bus each week? More than it will cost you in tax, in council tax that is. And finally, I want to refer to the Brighton Greens, who proposed a 4.5 increase in council tax, which was rejected by the other parties. They're a minority government, so the minority council, they couldn't put it through. But what's interesting is that now the unions are on their side, campaigning for at least a 2% rise in tax to save jobs and services. So what does our Green Amendment offer? The main thing is that we want to embark on that conversation with local people, not just about how they can volunteer to run their services, libraries, adventure playgrounds, whatever, but really about the crucial issue, the broader topic of how we organise and pay for the common good in our city. The Coalition is doing all it can to prevent this conversation by forcing us with the freeze grant, by making us come up with massive contingency funding. But we think it's really important to have this conversation, and we're proud of what we're doing. So, what we actually propose with the 6 million revenue that we would raise, we would hold a referendum. We would save all the libraries at least for a year while we discuss properly how to change the system. We would put over $1 million into social care. We would double the hardship fund, which helps those people who are hit hardest by council tax, the only ones who have had a rise, which is those who've lost their council tax benefit. We put $500,000 into advice centres, which to my mind are the people who are fighting against cuts, case by case. And we will put money into a 20-mile-an-hour zone for the whole city centre and begin to roll out that life-saving project across the city. And we've raised $5 million of capital to invest in solar panels. We could put 1,000 solar panels on council houses. That would mean that people living in those houses could save up to £240 a year in fuel bills. And of course that money would go back into the local economy instead of going into the big 6 energy companies. And the process of doing it would create jobs. And in Kirklees, a similar green proposal was accepted by the Labour administration. So we agree with the colleagues opposite about the damaging and unfair cuts. And had I been invited, I would have been delighted to go down to London with Councillor Daw to make the case for Sheffield. But where we do differ is that we also agree we have to make the best we can of the deal that we've been dealt. We agree with that. But what we do feel is that we need a wider, longer-term conversation about the future of government, for services and for democracy itself. Thank you.